In November 1940, the industrial landscape of Toledo, Ohio, witnessed something extraordinary. The Willys Overland manufacturing facility had just achieved what many considered impossible. Engineers had designed, constructed, and delivered two complete prototype vehicles to the United States Army. The entire process took exactly 75 days. They named their creation the Quad. The designation came from its four-wheel drive capability. The vehicle appeared small and boxy. Its design emphasized function over form. Nothing in its appearance hinted at the legendary status it would achieve. Nothing suggested it would become the most coveted piece of equipment in military circles. Within 4 short years, German officers would abandon all caution to capture these machines. They would value them above almost every other piece of American military hardware. They would openly acknowledge that the United States had engineered something their own technical experts could never replicate. This remarkable transformation began not with celebration, but with doubt. When intelligence photographs of early American Jeep prototypes reached German military analysts in late 1941, the reaction was one of dismissal. The response bordered on contempt. The vehicle appeared crude in every respect. It lacked doors entirely. The windshield could fold completely flat against the hood. The body consisted of simple pressed steel panels. Exposed bolts dotted the exterior surface. Protection from weather was minimal at best. German military planners had spent considerable time developing the Volkswagen Kübelwagen. To these experienced engineers, the American creation looked amateurish. It seemed hastily thrown together. One detailed intelligence assessment from early 1942 characterized the vehicle as appearing cobbled together quickly. The report noted a complete absence of the engineering sophistication expected from modern military equipment. German confidence in their own light vehicles ran deep. The Kübelwagen represented the work of Ferdinand Porsche himself. The design derived directly from the people's car that Hitler had championed throughout the 1930s. Weight specifications came in lighter than early Jeep prototypes. The flat underbody helped the vehicle slide smoothly over obstacles. Despite having only rear-wheel drive, testing results had been admirable. German engineers felt certain their approach was superior. Why invest precious resources in complex four-wheel drive systems? Clever engineering could achieve similar results with far less mechanical complexity. This confidence would prove to be a devastating miscalculation. The American Jeep was far from a hastily assembled compromise. It represented the culmination of intense competition, brutal field testing, and ruthless refinement processes. In June 1940, the United States Army had issued what many considered the most demanding procurement request in automotive history. Their specifications called for a quarter-ton reconnaissance vehicle with extraordinary capabilities. It needed to carry 3 men plus equipment. It had to travel cross-country through any terrain imaginable. The design required simplicity that would allow anyone to drive it. Construction had to be rugged enough to withstand combat abuse. Weight had to remain light enough for 4 soldiers to lift when stuck. The technical specifications were brutally precise. Wheelbase could not exceed 80 inches. Height had to stay under 40 inches. Total weight must remain below 1,300 pounds. 4-wheel drive was mandatory. The vehicle needed capability to climb 60% grades. Fording depth had to reach 18 inches minimum. The delivery deadline was equally unforgiving. 49 days from contract award to delivery of a working prototype. Most established automotive manufacturers declined to submit bids. The requirements seemed impossible to meet. 3 companies accepted the seemingly impossible challenge. American Bantam Car Company operated as a small firm in Butler, Pennsylvania. They had built their reputation on miniature civilian vehicles. Everyone was surprised when Bantam delivered the first working prototype exactly on schedule. The date was September 23, 1940. The Bantam prototype earned the nickname Blitz Buggy. Initial testing revealed beautiful performance characteristics. However, the Army harbored serious concerns about Bantam's production capacity. Could a company that had manufactured only 1,200 vehicles in 1939 possibly produce tens of thousands of military vehicles? The Army made a controversial decision. They invited two larger manufacturers to examine the Bantam design carefully. Both companies were asked to submit their own improved proposals. Willys Overland of Toledo, Ohio, accepted the invitation. Ford Motor Company also agreed to participate. Both larger companies studied the Bantam vehicle thoroughly. They examined every component and system. Then each produced their own version, incorporating significant improvements. The result was 3 competing vehicles. Each design offered different strengths. Testing continued ruthlessly throughout late 1940 and early 1941. Bantam had pioneered the basic layout and configuration. Willys contributed the powerful Go Devil engine, producing 60 horsepower. Ford refined the body design with the now iconic flat hood. Ford also integrated the headlights into the front fenders. In July 1941, the Army reached its final decision. Willys would serve as the primary contractor. However, the standardized design would incorporate the best features from all 3 competing companies. Ford would also manufacture vehicles to identical specifications. The standardized quarter-ton reconnaissance car received official designations. The Willys version became the MB. The Ford version was designated GPW. Full production began in November 1941. This timing placed initial production just weeks before Pearl Harbor. What emerged from the Toledo and Detroit manufacturing facilities was unlike anything the world had previously seen. The MB and GPW shared completely identical specifications. Length measured exactly 132 inches. Width came to 62 inches. Height with windshield raised reached 72 inches. Total weight was 2,160 pounds. The Go Devil engine displaced 134 cubic inches. Power output reached 60 horsepower at 4,000 RPM. Top speed on paved roads approached 60 miles per hour. Ground clearance of 8 3/4 inches allowed traversing terrain that would stop conventional vehicles completely. The 4-wheel drive system featured a 2-speed transfer case. Engagement and disengagement used simple floor-mounted levers. Most remarkably, the entire vehicle could be maintained in the field using basic tools. The engine had been designed for durability rather than precision. Tolerances were deliberately loose compared to civilian engines. This actually made the power plant more reliable under harsh combat conditions. Parts were completely interchangeable between Willys and Ford production lines. A mechanic could use components from any Jeep to repair another. The name itself reflected the vehicle's incredible versatility. While historians continue debating the exact origin, most agree that Jeep derived from the pronunciation of GP. This represented military shorthand for either general purpose or government procurement. Soldiers testing early prototypes in 1941 began calling them Jeeps informally. The name may have been influenced by a popular comic strip character. Eugene the Jeep could go anywhere and accomplish anything. The name stuck with remarkable persistence. When a journalist from the Washington Daily News rode in one of the early production vehicles in February 1941, he asked what it was called. The driver replied simply that it was a Jeep. The resulting article ran in newspapers nationwide. Willys recognized the enormous marketing potential. They trademarked the name in 1943. Soldiers had been using it informally for 2 years by then. General George Marshall served as Army Chief of Staff. He called the Jeep America's greatest contribution to modern warfare. War correspondent Ernie Pyle followed American troops through every major theater. He covered North Africa, Sicily, Italy, France, and the Pacific campaigns. Pyle wrote that the Jeep was as faithful as a dog. It was as strong as a mule and as agile as a goat. It did everything and went everywhere. But these glowing tributes came later. In early 1942, as the first Jeeps began arriving in combat zones, German intelligence officers maintained their skepticism. Their dismissive attitude would soon face a harsh reality check. The initial encounters between German forces and American Jeeps occurred in North Africa during late 1942. Operation Torch represented the Allied invasion of French North Africa. This massive operation brought American forces into direct contact with Axis troops for the first time in the war. Thousands of Jeeps landed with the invasion forces. German and Italian soldiers got their first close examination of the vehicles Americans had been producing by the thousands. The initial German assessment proved mixed at best. Captured intelligence reports from early 1943 acknowledged the Jeep's speed and cross-country mobility. However, they criticized what observers saw as poor fuel economy. They noted minimal armor protection. They highlighted vulnerability to mines and small arms fire. One report observed that American forces seemed to have unlimited numbers of these vehicles. This suggested wasteful overproduction rather than genuine tactical necessity. The Kübelwagen, German analysts argued confidently, achieved similar mobility with half the horsepower and much simpler mechanics. At German headquarters in Tunisia, officers examining their first captured Jeep in January 1943 found numerous points of criticism. The exposed engine compartment could be damaged easily by mud and debris. The canvas top provided absolutely no protection from shrapnel or small arms fire. The fuel tank mounted directly beneath the driver's seat seemed like a catastrophic design flaw. The simple three-speed transmission lacked the sophistication of German vehicles. Yet there were troubling observations that couldn't be dismissed easily. The Jeep's power-to-weight ratio was genuinely remarkable. With 60 horsepower moving only 2,100 pounds, it could accelerate faster than almost any German light vehicle. The four-wheel drive system engaged smoothly with simple floor levers. It worked flawlessly even in deep desert sand. Most disturbing was the gradual realization that Americans were producing these vehicles at an incomprehensible rate. Captured documents revealed production figures that German intelligence initially dismissed as obvious propaganda. According to these documents, Willys and Ford together were manufacturing Jeeps at a rate of one vehicle every 90 seconds during peak production periods. Every 90 seconds around the clock. German intelligence officers recalculated the figures multiple times. They remained certain there must be an error in translation or interpretation. There was no error whatsoever. By early 1943, American factories had already produced over 177,000 Jeeps. German production of all light military vehicles combined barely exceeded 50,000 units total. The implications were absolutely staggering. If American industrial capacity could produce reconnaissance vehicles in such astronomical quantities, what did that suggest about tank production? What about artillery manufacturing? What about aircraft production capabilities? The first reports of German soldiers actively seeking to capture American Jeeps came from Tunisia in March 1943. After the Battle of Kasserine Pass, where German forces had initially pushed American troops back, retreating Wehrmacht units took with them every operational Jeep they could locate. Officers wrote in detailed after-action reports that the captured American vehicles proved invaluable for reconnaissance missions and command functions. The reasons became increasingly clear as the North African campaign progressed through the spring. The terrain of Tunisia presented a unique combination of challenges. Rocky mountain passes alternated with deep, sandy wadis. Coastal roads existed in varying states of repair. Weather conditions changed rapidly. German vehicles struggled consistently with these conditions. The Kubelwagen, despite its clever and sophisticated design, lacked sufficient power to climb steep grades while carrying full combat loads. Its rear-wheel drive system had performed adequately in controlled testing environments. It proved woefully inadequate in actual combat conditions, where speed often meant the difference between survival and death. Heavy German vehicles consumed precious fuel at rates that strained already overstretched supply lines. Fuel shortages became a constant concern for German commanders. Every gallon had to be transported across the Mediterranean under constant Allied air attack. The American Jeep, by contrast, seemed purpose-built for exactly these demanding conditions. Its powerful engine pulled it effortlessly up grades that stopped Kubelwagens completely. The four-wheel drive system maintained excellent traction in sand and mud, where rear-wheel drive vehicles spun helplessly. Most critically, captured Jeeps came with something German vehicles desperately lacked. They came with access to abundant spare parts. American logistics were so efficient that maintenance depots held massive stocks of replacement components. German mechanics discovered they could keep captured Jeeps running indefinitely. They simply raided American supply dumps for parts. The standardization meant any component would fit any vehicle. A carburetor from one Jeep worked perfectly in another. Oberst Wolfgang Müller commanded a reconnaissance battalion in Tunisia. He wrote in his personal journal in April 1943 that his men had captured 6 American Jeeps. They immediately put all 6 vehicles into active service. Within 2 weeks of operation, he had formally requested that his German vehicles be replaced entirely with captured American equipment. The Jeeps were demonstrably faster than his Kubelwagens. They were more reliable in harsh conditions. They were dramatically easier to maintain with readily available parts. When his request was denied due to fuel consumption concerns, he noted bitterly in his journal that his Kubelwagens were consuming nearly as much fuel while covering half the distance. May 1943 brought the complete collapse of Axis forces in North Africa. When General Jürgen von Arnim surrendered on May 13th, approximately 250,000 German and Italian soldiers entered Allied captivity. Among the equipment abandoned or deliberately destroyed were several hundred captured American Jeeps that German units had been operating successfully for months. Allied intelligence officers cataloging abandoned Axis equipment were genuinely surprised to find so many of their own vehicles among the German motor pools. Detailed interrogations of captured German officers revealed a remarkably consistent pattern. Given a choice between a German Kubelwagen and a captured American Jeep, officers overwhelmingly preferred the American vehicle. Some units had been operating captured American vehicles for many months continuously. Maintenance records showed these vehicles often logged more operational hours than original German equipment. The fuel consumption issue proved largely irrelevant when German logistics were collapsing completely anyway. Fuel shortages affected all vehicles equally. The superior performance of captured Jeeps more than compensated for their higher consumption rates. The intelligence reports from North Africa reached German High Command in Berlin by June 1943. The conclusions were deeply uncomfortable for German leadership. American industrial capacity was producing vehicles in quantities Germany could never hope to match. The American Jeep, initially dismissed as primitive and amateurish, was demonstrably superior for reconnaissance and light transport roles. German units were actively seeking to capture and utilize enemy equipment. This suggested serious deficiencies in their own vehicles. Some German officers recommended accelerating production of four-wheel drive variants of the Kubelwagen. Others suggested more realistically that Germany simply could not compete with American production capacity. Resources should focus instead on areas where German engineering still held clear advantages. Heavy tanks and artillery were mentioned specifically. The debate became completely moot within months. By mid-1943, German industry was struggling desperately to maintain existing production levels of any vehicles. Allied bombing raids were increasing in frequency and intensity. Introducing a completely new four-wheel drive light vehicle design was utterly impossible. Germany would have to fight the remainder of the war with whatever equipment it already possessed. Meanwhile, Jeep production in America continued to accelerate dramatically. By the end of 1943, total production exceeded 360,000 vehicles. The production process had been refined to extraordinary efficiency levels. Willys plant workers in Toledo could completely assemble a Jeep from raw components in less than 3 hours. Parts were manufactured in factories scattered across 32 different states. Components were then shipped to Toledo or Ford plants in Dallas and Louisville for final assembly. The standardization was so complete that parts from any factory would fit perfectly in any vehicle. A carburetor manufactured in Wisconsin would work flawlessly in a Jeep assembled in Kentucky. This interchangeability, combined with massive production volumes, created a logistical advantage unprecedented in military history. Every Jeep operating anywhere in the field could be maintained with parts from any supply depot worldwide. Compare this remarkable capability to German logistics. Different German vehicles required specific parts from specific manufacturers. This created absolute nightmares for supply officers trying to keep mechanically diverse motor pools operational. The transformation in German attitudes toward the Jeep accelerated dramatically with the Allied invasion of Italy in September 1943. American and British forces landing at Salerno brought thousands of Jeeps ashore in the initial assault waves. German forces defending Italy got their most sustained exposure yet to American mechanization capabilities. In the mountains of southern Italy, where roads were primitive and terrain was brutally difficult, the Jeep's advantages became completely overwhelming. German forces attempting to establish defensive positions found themselves consistently outpaced by American reconnaissance units operating in Jeeps that could navigate mountain trails impossible for heavier vehicles. German counterattacks that relied on surprise found that American units were almost impossible to surprise successfully. Jeep-mounted patrols provided constant intelligence on German movements and positions. Every American infantry regiment had approximately 145 Jeeps assigned to various roles. This meant American commanders had mobility and flexibility that German officers could only dream of possessing. A typical German regimental commander might have access to a handful of staff cars and motorcycles for transportation. His American counterpart commanded a fleet of Jeeps that could rapidly reposition troops, evacuate wounded soldiers, move critical supplies, and provide mobile communications platforms. The casualty evacuation capability particularly impressed German medical officers who treated wounded American prisoners. American Jeeps could be quickly converted to ambulances by mounting stretchers across the rear seats. This meant wounded soldiers could reach field hospitals within minutes of being injured. Survival rates improved dramatically as a result. German wounded soldiers often faced hours-long journeys over rough roads in conventional ambulances. The difference in survival rates was measurable and significant. Captured German medical personnel reported their shock at how quickly American wounded received professional treatment. They were transported rapidly from front-line positions in vehicles that could traverse absolutely any terrain. In December 1943, General Gunther Friedrich Schulz was captured near Cassino during heavy fighting. American intelligence officers interviewed him extensively. When asked specifically about American equipment, he stated flatly that German generals admired the Jeep more than any other piece of American materiel. It was, he said emphatically, the vehicle they most wanted to capture for their own use. This assessment came from a senior German officer with extensive combat experience across multiple theaters. It marked a complete reversal from the dismissive intelligence reports of early 1942. German attitudes had undergone a fundamental transformation. By early 1944, captured Jeeps had become so highly prized among German forces in Italy that special orders were issued regarding their proper use. Captured American vehicles were required to be clearly marked with German military insignia to prevent friendly fire incidents. Maintenance crews received specific training on Jeep mechanics and systems. Fuel allocation for captured vehicles was given priority status, despite their higher consumption compared to Kübelwagens. The reasoning was straightforward and practical. A single Jeep could accomplish reconnaissance missions that might require 2 or 3 German vehicles working together. Its superior speed, extended range, and exceptional cross-country capability made it more valuable than German equipment, despite consuming more precious fuel. German units operating captured Jeeps reported significantly improved tactical mobility across all mission types. They could conduct reconnaissance operations deeper into Allied lines. They could move faster and cover more ground than was possible with Kübelwagens. The 4-wheel drive system meant they could operate effectively in weather and terrain conditions that would completely immobilize German vehicles. The intelligence-gathering value was enormous and immediately apparent. A German reconnaissance team operating in a captured Jeep could pass for American forces at distance. This allowed them to move much closer to Allied positions before being positively identified as hostile. The Jeep's proven mechanical reliability meant fewer unexpected breakdowns during critical missions. Its deliberately simple design meant that even minimally trained mechanics could perform essential field repairs using basic tools and improvised parts. Operation Grief, during the Battle of the Bulge in December 1944, provided the most dramatic example of German desire for captured Jeeps. When Adolf Hitler personally ordered Otto Skorzeny to conduct special operations behind American lines, Skorzeny specifically requested large numbers of captured American vehicles. He particularly wanted Jeeps. The ambitious plan required German commandos dressed in authentic American uniforms to penetrate Allied lines successfully and create widespread confusion. Skorzeny formally requested at least 100 captured Jeeps for the operation to have any chance of success. German supply officers scoured rear areas frantically searching for captured vehicles. They contacted every unit that might possibly have captured American equipment. Despite extensive searching and unlimited authority, they managed to acquire approximately 30 Jeeps. This was far fewer than the minimum number requested. The critical shortage forced Skorzeny to improvise desperately. German vehicles were hastily disguised to superficially resemble American equipment. The fact that even with Hitler's personal backing and unlimited authority throughout the Reich, German forces could only scrape together 30 captured Jeeps revealed how difficult they were to acquire intact. American forces simply possessed too many Jeeps for German forces to capture them in significant numbers. German forces had too few opportunities to capture them without damage during rapid retreats and fluid combat situations. The German commandos who did receive genuine captured Jeeps for Operation Greif found them remarkably effective for infiltration missions. Dressed in authentic American uniforms and driving genuine American Jeeps, German soldiers managed to penetrate Allied defensive lines successfully. They caused significant confusion during the opening days of the Battle of the Bulge. American checkpoint guards became increasingly paranoid as word spread. They questioned everyone extensively and demanded detailed answers to trivia questions about American culture, baseball statistics, and popular entertainment. The captured German commandos, when finally apprehended and interrogated extensively, consistently praised the Jeep's performance characteristics. They noted that superior speed allowed quick escapes from dangerous situations. Exceptional maneuverability helped evade improvised checkpoints. Most importantly, the Jeep's ubiquity throughout American forces meant one additional Jeep attracted absolutely no special attention. Operation Grafe failed strategically to achieve its ambitious objectives. However, it demonstrated conclusively how effectively German soldiers could operate American equipment when given the opportunity. The Jeeps themselves performed flawlessly in German hands under demanding conditions. This suggested that any perceived deficiencies had more to do with fuel availability than fundamental engineering shortcomings. The massive invasion of France in June 1944 brought Jeep numbers to levels that absolutely astonished German defenders. Operation Overlord involved landing approximately 20,000 Jeeps during the first weeks of the invasion alone. German forces defending Normandy found themselves facing an American army with mobility capabilities beyond anything they had previously encountered. Every German after-action report from Normandy specifically mentioned American mobility advantages as a critical factor. While German infantry divisions relied primarily on horse-drawn transport, with only a small fraction of their vehicles actually motorized, American divisions were completely mechanized. This fundamental difference meant American units could maneuver faster, concentrate forces more rapidly, and respond to emerging threats more quickly than German forces could match. The Jeep was absolutely central to this overwhelming advantage. It served simultaneously as scout car, command vehicle, communications platform, weapons carrier, ambulance, and general-purpose transport. No single German vehicle could match this versatility. German officers captured during the Normandy campaign consistently mentioned American Jeeps when questioned about equipment advantages. Oberst Hans von Luck commanded a panzer reconnaissance battalion. He wrote in his detailed memoirs that he had personally used a captured American Jeep for several weeks after his own command vehicle was destroyed. He found the American vehicle superior to German reconnaissance vehicles in almost every measurable respect except fuel economy. The fuel economy issue became increasingly critical as German fuel shortages worsened throughout the summer of 1944 in France. The German fuel shortage in France during summer 1944 made captured Jeeps increasingly impractical to operate for extended periods. Even when German units successfully captured Jeeps completely intact, operating them became progressively more difficult as fuel supplies dwindled to critical levels. Some German commanders issued specific orders that captured Jeeps should be used exclusively for the most critical missions to conserve increasingly scarce fuel supplies. The irony was bitter. German forces finally had access to superior American equipment, but lacked the fuel to operate it effectively. When fuel ran dry, German units had no choice but to leave captured vehicles behind. The irony cut deep. Here were American Jeeps, the German forces desperately craved. Yet even when they managed to seize these prized vehicles, they often sat useless. Empty fuel tanks transformed coveted transportation into immobile steel. The few German units that still received fuel allocations painted a different picture entirely. SS Panzer divisions enjoyed priority status. Fuel trucks still reached their positions when other units went without. These fortunate formations kept their captured American Jeeps running throughout that blazing summer of 1944. Field reports from these privileged units told an interesting story. The vehicles consumed more fuel than German commanders preferred. The thirsty engines drank gasoline at rates that made supply officers wince. Yet these same reports concluded that captured jeeps remained superior for reconnaissance missions. The extra fuel cost seemed justified. Strategic mobility meant everything in fast-moving campaigns. Tactical flexibility could determine victory or defeat. Speed often mattered more than fuel economy. One captured SS officer provided a telling assessment to his interrogators. His unit would gladly trade 2 German vehicles for a single American Jeep. The condition was simple. Fuel had to be available to operate it. The technical specifications revealed exactly why German soldiers held such strong preferences. Numbers told the complete story. The German vehicle weighed approximately 1,600 pounds. The American Jeep tipped the scales at 2,100 pounds. Weight alone favored the German design. Power delivery created the real difference. The German vehicle relied on an air-cooled engine. Initial production models generated 23.5 horsepower. Later versions from 1943 boosted output to 25 horsepower. This still represented less than half the Jeep's robust 60 horsepower output. Mathematics made the performance gap crystal clear. The German vehicle achieved roughly 15 horsepower per ton. The American Jeep delivered approximately 28 horsepower per ton. Nearly double the power-to-weight ratio created dramatic performance differences. Acceleration told part of the story. The Jeep pulled away faster from standing starts. Climbing ability revealed even starker contrasts. The Jeep powered up slopes that left German vehicles struggling. Top speed comparisons showed consistent American advantages. The German vehicle could reach about 50 miles per hour on smooth roads. Maintaining this speed off-road proved challenging. Rough terrain reduced performance significantly. The American Jeep approached 55 miles per hour maximum speed. More importantly, it sustained 40 miles per hour across broken ground. Four-wheel drive technology created the most critical difference. The German approach used clever engineering solutions. Rear-wheel drive provided the foundation. A self-locking differential distributed power between rear wheels. Portal gear reduction hubs added mechanical advantage. The flat underbody helped the vehicle slide over obstacles instead of catching. These engineering solutions worked well in specific conditions. Sand presented fewer problems for the lightweight German vehicle. Snow and mud sometimes favored the flat floor design. The vehicle could glide over soft surfaces that trapped heavier machines. Steep terrain exposed the limitations. Crossing obstacles challenged the rear drive system. Maximum traction situations favored four-wheel drive decisively. The American Jeep sent power to all four wheels simultaneously. This meant it could climb grades impossible for the German vehicle. Testing data provided precise comparisons. American engineers measured Jeep performance under various conditions. Fully loaded Jeeps climbed 60% grades successfully. The German vehicle struggled with 30% slopes, carrying similar loads. The difference meant tactical mobility in mountainous terrain. Reliability became another crucial factor in combat conditions. The German engine was simple in theory. Air cooling eliminated radiator complications. Fewer moving parts suggested greater dependability. Combat reality proved different. Limited power meant the engine worked constantly at maximum output. Heavy combat conditions demanded peak performance continuously. This led to premature wear patterns. Components failed sooner than expected under sustained stress. The American Jeep's more powerful engine rarely operated at maximum capacity. Reserve power meant lower stress levels during normal operation. Components lasted longer under combat conditions. Service life extended significantly compared to the German alternative. Maintenance requirements heavily favored American equipment. The German vehicle featured design simplicity. Fewer complex systems meant fewer potential failure points. This advantage disappeared in practice. Standardization created the real maintenance edge. American Jeeps used identical components across all production. Parts were universally available throughout the supply system. Mechanics grabbed replacements from nearby supply depots. Stocks measured in thousands of components. German mechanics faced different challenges. German vehicles required specific parts manufactured only in Germany. Long waits for replacements became routine. Combat units sometimes cannibalized damaged vehicles to keep others operational. The parts shortage grew worse as Allied bombing targeted German factories. Combat units that operated both vehicle types provided the most telling comparisons. Given free choice and adequate fuel supplies, German soldiers almost universally preferred captured American Jeeps. This preference appeared consistently across multiple sources. Captured documents revealed unit requests for American vehicles. Interrogation reports recorded soldier statements favoring Jeeps. Post-war memoirs from German officers confirmed these preferences. Officers who had commanded units with access to both vehicles wrote extensively about the comparison. Production statistics revealed the true scale of American industrial advantage. The numbers staggered German planners who saw intelligence reports. From 1941 through 1945, Willys manufactured 361,339 MB Jeeps. Ford contributed 277,896 GPW Jeeps to the total. Combined production exceeded 639,000 vehicles built to identical specifications. Every vehicle rolled off assembly lines meeting the same exacting standards. Interchangeable parts meant universal maintenance support. Standardized training applied to every vehicle. German production told a different story entirely. Total wartime production reached exactly 50,135 vehicles. This meant American factories built more than 12 times as many comparable vehicles. The ratio revealed industrial capacity differences that shaped strategic outcomes. The distribution of American production multiplied Allied advantages further. Roughly 30% of Jeep production went to Allied forces through Lend-Lease programs. Britain received thousands of Jeeps for their forces. The Soviet Union took delivery of tens of thousands more. Free French forces equipped themselves entirely with American vehicles. Thousands of Jeeps rolled with Free French units across multiple theaters. This meant German forces encountered Jeeps regardless of which Allied army they faced. American units used Jeeps exclusively. British forces increasingly relied on American vehicles. Soviet units received massive Jeep shipments. Free French formations drove American equipment. The universality created additional tactical advantages. When Allied forces operated together, they shared maintenance support. Spare parts worked across different national units. Mechanics trained on identical vehicles could service any Allied Jeep. Common training manuals applied universally. German forces faced the opposite situation. A bewildering variety of light vehicles came from different manufacturers. Parts were not interchangeable between models. Maintenance required specialized knowledge for each vehicle type. Training varied by manufacturer and model. Standardization extended far beyond the vehicles themselves. American military training used identical curricula worldwide. Mechanics trained in Kansas could maintain Jeeps in Italy with equal skill. The same training applied in the Pacific Theater. Training manuals remained identical across all combat zones. Parts catalogs applied universally, regardless of location. Technical bulletins reached every theater simultaneously. This created enormous efficiency advantages that multiplied production value. Producing 600,000 identical vehicles proved strategically superior to manufacturing 600,000 varied vehicles. Logistics alone justified complete standardization. Supply calculations became straightforward. Every Jeep used identical components. American supply officers could predict spare parts requirements accurately. Mathematical formulas determined supply needs. Standardization made logistics planning routine rather than complex. German supply officers faced logistical nightmares. Dozens of different vehicle types required unique parts. Inventory calculations became impossibly complex. Stocking decisions involved hundreds of vehicle variations. Jeep versatility exceeded anything German planners had envisioned for light vehicles. The basic platform served multiple roles simultaneously. Reconnaissance remained the primary mission. Command vehicles carried officers between positions. Specialized configurations multiplied the platform's value. Jeeps mounted with machine guns became mobile weapons platforms. The British SAS in North Africa famously used Jeeps mounting multiple machine guns. High-speed raids on German airfields became their signature tactic. Wire cutters protected crews from throat-high cables. Germans strung these deadly traps across roads. Motorcycle riders and Jeep drivers faced decapitation without protection. Modified Jeeps cut through cables safely. Radio-equipped Jeeps served as mobile communication centers. Stretcher-mounted versions became fast ambulances. Trailer-towing Jeeps moved supplies forward and wounded backward. Railway wheels allowed Jeeps to run on tracks when roads were destroyed. Engineered Jeeps carried generators and welding equipment. Forward observers used Jeeps to move rapidly between firing positions. Reconnaissance units covered enormous distances impossible with slower vehicles. Airborne divisions loaded Jeeps into gliders for immediate post-landing mobility. Amphibious versions proved less successful than standard models. The basic design was simply too valuable to modify extensively. Adaptability meant units could modify Jeeps for specific missions using local resources. Standard Jeeps became weapons platforms within hours. Welding mounting brackets for machine guns required minimal tools. Stretcher racks converted Jeeps into ambulances within minutes. This flexibility proved invaluable in fluid combat situations. Requirements changed rapidly in fast-moving campaigns. The Jeep adapted to meet new needs almost instantly. German vehicles, while capable in designed roles, lacked this adaptability. Limited power meant additional equipment significantly degraded performance. The Jeep's power margin allowed additional weight without serious performance loss. Armor could be added when necessary. Extra weapons mounted without compromising mobility. Equipment loads varied according to mission requirements. General Dwight Eisenhower provided the ultimate assessment of Jeep importance. As Supreme Commander of Allied forces in Europe, he identified 5 pieces of equipment most vital to Allied success. The Jeep made this exclusive list. The other 4 items were equally revealing. The C-47 transport aircraft provided strategic mobility. The 2.5-ton truck handled heavy logistics. Bulldozers built airfields and cleared obstacles. The DUKW amphibious vehicle crossed water barriers. Eisenhower noted an interesting pattern among these 5 critical items. None were combat vehicles in the traditional sense. They were tools for mobility, logistics, and construction. The Jeep's inclusion testified to its strategic rather than tactical importance. Production tempo at peak capacity staggered the imagination. Combined output exceeded 15,000 Jeeps monthly during 1944. Daily averages reached 500 vehicles. Assembly lines operated around the clock to meet military demands. Logistics coordination required hundreds of component suppliers. Engines, transmissions, and axles converged on assembly lines with precision timing. Body panels arrived exactly when needed. Any delay stopped entire production lines. Efficiency improved constantly throughout the war period. Early 1941 production required significantly more labor per vehicle. Late 1944 production achieved much greater efficiency. Learning curves reduced manufacturing time steadily. Process improvements eliminated wasted motion. Automation replaced manual operations where possible. By 1944, labor hours per Jeep had dropped nearly 40% compared to 1941 levels. Production volume increased, while labor requirements decreased. Cost reductions paralleled efficiency gains throughout the war. Initial July 1941 contracts specified unit costs of $738.74 per vehicle. Improved production processes reduced effective costs to approximately $600 per Jeep by 1944. America was building more Jeeps faster and cheaper as the war progressed. This contrasted sharply with German experience. Allied bombing degraded German production efficiency. Costs increased while output declined. The trends moved in opposite directions. The war's final year brought complete German collapse. Fuel shortages paralyzed remaining German forces. Ammunition ran short across all fronts. German logistics disintegrated under sustained Allied pressure. Even captured American equipment often proved useless. Fuel shortages meant abandoned vehicles littered German roads. Retreating German forces left equipment behind rather than carrying it without fuel. Individual German soldiers continued seeking captured Jeeps when possible. Personal mobility retained value, even as strategic mobility collapsed entirely. German officers used captured Jeeps to move between disintegrating units. German soldiers employed them to flee advancing Allied armies. The Jeep had transformed from being dismissed as primitive in 1942 to becoming the most desired vehicle in German forces by 1945. Post-war interrogations provided final assessments from German officers. When asked to evaluate American equipment, commanders consistently rated the Jeep among the most impressive achievements. Some rated it more strategically valuable than American tanks or aircraft. The reasoning appeared consistent across multiple interviews. Tanks and aircraft drew attention through dramatic combat performance. The Jeep enabled everything else through mobility and logistics. Superior firepower meant nothing without logistics to supply it. Advanced tactics required mobility to implement effectively. The Jeep embodied American industrial and organizational advantages more than any other single piece of equipment. Production numbers, standardization, reliability, and versatility represented everything about American methods that Germany could not match. General Major Fritz Bayerlein commanded Panzer Lehr Division in Normandy. He told post-war interrogators that the American Jeep ranked among the 3 most valuable pieces of Allied equipment. Long-range fighter escorts for bomber streams made the list. Proximity-fused anti-aircraft shells completed the trio. The Jeep earned inclusion not through superior firepower or destructive capability. It multiplied the effectiveness of everything else in American arsenals. This force multiplication effect created strategic advantages that individual weapons could not achieve. German attitudes toward the American Jeep underwent one of the war's most complete reversals. Intelligence officers dismissed it as primitive and inferior in 1941 and 1942. Combat units actively sought captured Jeeps by 1943. Special maintenance crews trained specifically on captured Jeeps by 1944. Even in 1945, as everything collapsed around them, German soldiers still prized American Jeeps above nearly all other equipment. The progression revealed the broader war story. Germany entered conflict with confidence in technical and tactical superiority. German vehicles, tactics, and soldiers were assumed to represent world standards. Early victories seemed to confirm these assumptions completely. American industrial capacity gradually overwhelmed initial German advantages. Organizational ability and engineering pragmatism proved decisive over time. The Jeep epitomized this process through practical rather than sophisticated design. Sophistication mattered less than production capacity, reliability, and standardization. America built enough Jeeps to equip every unit requiring them. Universal spare parts maintained them effectively. Flexible employment covered every combat role imaginable. German soldiers recognized this reality faster than German high command. Field troops saw that American units possessed unmatched mobility. German forces could not equal American tactical flexibility. American wounded reached hospitals faster than German casualties. American supplies moved forward more quickly than German logistics allowed. American commanders responded to changing situations more rapidly than their German counterparts. Much of this advantage stemmed from routine rather than exceptional mobility. When German commanders captured intact American supply depots, they discovered warehouses filled with Jeep spare parts. Organizational charts showed Jeep allocations for even the smallest American units. American operations featured Jeeps performing every conceivable task. Generals rode in Jeeps to visit front lines. Artillery pieces were towed by Jeeps. Wounded soldiers were evacuated in Jeeps. The ubiquity had no German equivalent. German vehicles were valuable but scarce resources. Careful husbanding and assignment to priority units only characterized German vehicle allocation. American Jeeps appeared so numerous, they seemed disposable equipment. Units losing Jeeps to enemy action simply requisitioned replacements. Supply depots stocked thousands of vehicles for immediate distribution. This abundance created strategic flexibility impossible for German forces. American commanders planned operations assuming unlimited vehicle availability. German commanders carefully rationed vehicle assignments. Operations requiring more vehicles than available simply could not be planned. Constraints shaped strategic possibilities directly. Mechanical simplicity meant damaged Jeeps could often be repaired quickly in field conditions. American maintenance doctrine emphasized rapid repairs with extensive spare parts stocks. Vehicles damaged beyond field repair were replaced rather than waiting for depot overhaul. This approach required enormous supply chains, but resulted in consistently high operational readiness rates. German maintenance doctrine emphasized careful repair and conservation. Replacement vehicles were too scarce to waste. Damaged vehicles received multiple repairs and overhauls. This kept them operational, but often with significantly degraded performance. The fundamental difference reflected different industrial capacities entirely. America could afford vehicles with some redundancy built in. Battlefield losses were acceptable when replacement equipment was continuously available. Germany had to conserve every vehicle carefully because industrial capacity could not replace losses. Post-war vehicle development worldwide showed clear Jeep influence. Every major military began projects to develop equivalent vehicles. The British Land Rover emerged directly from wartime Jeep experience. The Soviet Gazee 69 showed obvious American influence. French Delahaye VLR development reflected lessons learned from captured Jeeps. Dozens of other vehicles worldwide copied Jeep characteristics. Even divided Germany developed Jeep derivatives when the Bundeswehr formed. The DKW Munga, introduced in 1956, showed clear Jeep influence in layout and capabilities. Japan, which fought against Jeep-equipped forces in the Pacific, developed the Toyota Land Cruiser based partially on studying captured American Jeeps. Civilian markets transformed even more dramatically than military applications. Willys recognized commercial potential during wartime production. The 1945 CJ-2A civilian Jeep retained military layout but added civilian features. Tailgates, side-mounted spare tires, and slightly more comfortable seating appeared on civilian models. Farmers, ranchers, construction companies, and outdoor enthusiasts embraced civilian Jeeps immediately. All-day work pulling farm equipment, followed by family transportation duty, proved the versatility. Remote construction sites became accessible. Hunting camps in previously unreachable locations opened up. The CJ-2A sold for $1,090, expensive for the time, but justified by versatility. Strong sales encouraged continued development of civilian variants. The CJ-3A in 1949 featured one-piece windshields. The CJ-5 in 1955 became one of automotive history's longest-running models, remaining in production for 31 years. Civilian Jeep markets grew steadily through the 1950s and 1960s. The 1970s brought explosive growth as recreational four-wheel driving gained popularity. The Jeep brand passed through several corporate owners, from Willys to Kaiser, to American Motors to Chrysler. Each owner recognized the value of Jeep heritage and brand recognition. Modern vehicles like the Wrangler deliberately echo original MB design elements. Vertical grille slots and exposed hinges maintain visual connections to wartime origins. Direct lineage from 1941 military origins to modern civilian SUVs represents automotive history's most successful product evolution. Annual Jeep sales now exceed 1 million vehicles worldwide. The original military requirement spawned an entire vehicle category, generating tens of billions in annual sales. German experience with captured American Jeeps offers lessons extending far beyond vehicle engineering. Superior technology means little without supporting infrastructure. Clever engineering could not compensate for limited production, scarce spare parts, and insufficient fuel supplies. The Jeep succeeded not through sophisticated design, but through adequate performance built in overwhelming quantities with comprehensive logistical support. Standardization proved more valuable than optimization in wartime conditions. Rather than developing multiple vehicle variants optimized for specific roles, America built one standardized vehicle adaptable to many roles. This created enormous advantages in production, maintenance, training, and logistics that outweighed performance benefits from specialized vehicles. Mass production required different engineering philosophies entirely. German vehicles featured tight tolerances and precision manufacturing. This created excellent performance when new but made field maintenance difficult and required specialized parts. American vehicles, particularly Jeeps, featured loose tolerances and simpler construction. Performance suffered slightly compared to precision manufacturing. Reliability and maintainability improved dramatically under field conditions. Industrial capacity mattered more than individual weapons quality in prolonged warfare. German tanks, aircraft, and small arms often showed superior engineering compared to American equivalents. Superior individual weapons could not overcome massive numerical disadvantages. America built 643,000 Jeeps during wartime. Germany managed 50,000 comparable vehicles. The 12-to-1 ratio told the strategic story more clearly than any technical comparison. Training and doctrine multiplied equipment advantages significantly. American forces trained extensively on vehicle maintenance. Doctrine emphasized mobility as the foundation of tactical success. American units extracted maximum value from their vehicle advantages. German forces trained in infantry-centered tactics inherited from armies relying heavily on horse transport. Sometimes they failed to exploit fully their own mechanized equipment advantages. Traditional thinking limited technological possibilities. Perception and reality sometimes diverged dramatically in wartime assessments. German intelligence initially dismissed Jeeps based on superficial technical analysis. Combat experience revealed massive gaps between perceived capabilities and actual performance. Organizations relying on theoretical analysis rather than empirical testing risk catastrophic miscalculations. Real-world performance often differs significantly from paper specifications. Logistics determined strategic possibilities more than tactical capabilities. Spare parts availability, fuel supply, and maintenance support often mattered more than vehicle specifications. German units sometimes possessed superior equipment, rendered useless by logistics failures. American logistics ensured Jeeps remained operational regardless of location or combat intensity. Supply chains reached every theater with identical parts and support. The laughter stopped completely in Tunisia by May 1943. German forces surrendering in North Africa no longer made dismissive jokes about American engineering in their final reports. Requests for captured American vehicles replaced mockery. Grudging admissions that American methods produced effective results appeared in German documents. The progression revealed how American industrial capacity gradually overwhelmed initial German advantages. The Jeep epitomized this process through production capacity, reliability, and standardization rather than sophistication. Hundreds of thousands of vehicles multiplied individual advantages into strategic dominance. General George Marshall's assessment proved prophetic in retrospect. The Jeep was indeed America's greatest contribution to modern warfare. Not as the most powerful weapon, but as the enabler of everything else. The Willys MB and Ford GPW served faithfully throughout the war and beyond. Their influence exceeded service life significantly. They proved that mass production of standardized equipment supported by efficient logistics could decisively influence military outcomes. Industrial capacity was itself a form of military power that traditional military thinking often overlooked. German soldiers who laughed at Jeeps in 1941 had underestimated American industrial might completely. By 1943, they were actively trying to capture these vehicles for their own use. By 1945, they recognized that Jeeps represented everything about American power they had failed to understand. The Jeep went everywhere American forces operated. It did everything combat required. It kept going under conditions that stopped other vehicles, just as America had designed it to do from the very beginning.